You are now in the realm of enlightenment and transformation, as brought to you by Foundational Fridays. And now, let us begin.
Greetings all. Here we are again, another Foundational Friday. I, of course, am your conductor and host, Yuya Assaan-ANU, Chief Jegna of the ANU Spiritual Order and head instructor of the Sadulu House Spiritual Center, where we explore and perfect self-actualizing spirituality. Of course, speaking of self-actualizing and, reality reconstruction, I cannot leave out that this Sunday at 12:30, I will be at Integral Yoga, very popular yoga studio here in New York City. And I'll be giving a workshop there, of course, on self-actualization and reality reconstruction using mind meditation and your spiritual cosmic forces. So it's sure to be a wonderful event, and I look forward to seeing all of you there who are coming through. I definitely urge my New York people to make a visit. After we do this spot, actually, Integral Yoga, I don't think I'll be in New York City for some time after that. My next stop, I think, is in New Jersey, Somerset, at an expo. And then I'll be much further out, away from the tri-state area for some time after that, hitting some other locations. So if you were not able to make the event at Nicholas Bookstore, then I urge you to come through and make this event. People were really touched, and they received a lot of healing at the Nicholas Bookstore event, and it was something that was very good and nutritious for us all. So come out and be a part of that experience. Whenever we're able to gather together, we're able to really heal the deprivation that we suffer from a lot of times, not being able to be around those who we consider to be consciously aware, or who are no longer sleepwalking. So it's good whenever we have opportunities to get together and commune. All right. So I urge you all to come out and be a part of that. Come out and be a part of that experience this Sunday at Integral Yoga. You can go to meetup.com for the details, but we'll have a little spot a little later in the show where we'll give you some more details and how to get over there this Sunday. So, the weather's been really nice out here. So, it's a nice way to spend your Sunday down in the city, and getting some information and getting some spiritual food and knowledge and wisdom. Of course, as always, class initiations and class tuition will be heavily discounted for those who come into this particular lecture and into all the lectures and workshops. All right. So that's always a nice incentive to know that you have that as well there for you. But in any event, this show or this segment will be dealing with the cosmic archetype known as Maat. Maat, which is spelled M-A-A-T. Maat. Sometimes you'll see it M-A''A-T. Okay, or sometimes even you'll see it M-A-Y-A-T. Most likely for phonetic reasons. But yeah, Maat. This is the archetype that we're tapping into. And for those of you who know anything about Maat, you know that she's a very central and key figure to our Kemetic studies and to Kemetic spiritual and political construct. Maat, again, being the values and personifying or the personification of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, even-handedness, order. Okay, these things just among many other principles, but these are just some of the things that Maat is associated with, her name actually meaning exactly those things. But more in essence, when we're dealing with the science of Maat, her title and her name means that which is real, okay, or that which is true, which I think is kind of appropriate. There was a very good discussion that our sister Kim had initiated. Kim is one of the hosts on our radio channel, Enlightenment and Transformation. She's one of the newer hosts. So I think she's done maybe 1 or 2 shows so far, something like that. But she's, of course, one of our students in the ANU Spiritual Order. And she had brought up a very good discussion that went in some good directions. You know, I was kind of monitoring a little bit, looking at the students have the discussion. And she had spoke about the difference between truth and fact, and how sometimes when you engage in a conversation with a person and they're kind of backed into a place where maybe their perception of truth is about to change because of the evidence that you're putting in front of them, they'll dismiss you or dismiss the subject matter by saying, well, you know, all truths have a falsehood in them, so one cannot really know anything, you know, something like that. She was saying, I'm probably misquoting it, but it was to that effect. And it's kind of like when you're explaining something to someone and then they just, you know, kind of end the conversation like, well, you know, no one really knows anything for sure, so there's no point in really even talking about this. So in essence, one can never really know anything because there's so much in the world to know, and once you learn something, you find there's so much more to learn. So why learn anything? Let's just walk around being asleep, you know, which is, you know, an excuse that many people use not to take in new data, not to take in new knowledge. You know, statements like, I don't know and I don't want to know. Statements like, I'm just a simple person, I'm not into all of that. Or, you know, again, statements like, well, truth is subjective. You know, that's your truth. You know, so that's your truth. I don't have to agree with that. So, you know, many people will use these statements, and it's not really our responsibility to try to convince anyone. You know, we present the light and that's it. Whether you want to accept it or you want to leave it alone, that's on you. You know, but if I was called spiritually to share this information with you, then my job is done. I can move off with a clean conscience. And that's what a large part of what today's segment is about, or this evening's Foundational Friday. When we're dealing with the concept of Maat, one of the key pieces that we're dealing with is having a clean conscience, the lightness of your own conscience and your perception of yourself, having the idea of having that sacred harmony and that sacred link between your higher self and your lower self, okay, and being okay with each one, you know. And this brings a lightness of consciousness, understanding that your birth, most importantly, one of the questions that is asked, that Maat asked at the judgment scene, which we'll get into, is, you know, do you value your birth? Do you value your living? Do you wish that you were never born? Are you happy that you were born? You know, this is one of the key and critical questions that she asks you. And it's not really about the logistics of answering the question, because of course we say, oh yeah, you know, I love my life, whatever, you know, it's kind of easy to say that, but it's really about the conviction and the authenticity of your answer. Okay, it's more about that, because it's very easy to say anything. And what's important for us is to feel the kinetic energy that a person or a situation sends to us. And this is one of the things that Maat has taught us to use to judge a situation, or to even make judgment on a person. You know, I know often we say that one should not judge, but I don't agree with that. I've actually never agreed with that. I never really understood that statement very much, because even if someone makes the statement that we should not judge, I have to judge the value of that actual statement to comply with it or not. I have to think about it and say, should I not judge? Does that make sense? You know, how valuable, how noteworthy or thought-worthy is that actual idea or concept? Well, that is a judgment. You know, that's a judgment within itself. In fact, our entire life experience is held in judgment, in that judgment, you know, by our brains, by our minds. Everything is judged. It's judged for its value. It's judged for its merit. It's judged for its usefulness to our life purpose. So you're always going to judge. But the key is, what is the criteria that you're using to judge with? And this is when, we get into the concepts and the thoughts and the practices of Maat, which again connects us with the authenticity and the trueness of our experience so that we can make right-minded and correct and fair judgments. Okay. Now, it's important to note, I'll give you some of the basics of what we're speaking about here when we're dealing with Ma'at. Because, I know many of you have probably heard at least the term Ma'at before. It's a highly used term in the quote-unquote conscious community and the community of those who have higher awareness, because Ma'at is such a central figure to our Kemetic studies and to Kemetic society. And Ma'at, Ma'at's core concept pivots on the idea of balance. So people may say things like, what you're doing over there is not Ma'at, or I'm trying to restore Ma'at. And in fact, these are not just conscious colloquialisms. This is not just higher awareness slang. In fact, in Kemetic society, and for those who are new to the show, when I'm saying Kemetic or Kemet, I'm referring to the landmass known as Egypt. Okay, so in Kemetic society, those terms were actually used. People would often say this particular term, speak Ma'at. If you're going to speak to me, speak Ma'at, meaning keep it real. Lay it down on the wood the way it's supposed to be. Be authentic, be bona fide in what you're saying. Don't you dare lie to me. But speak with balance, speak with very quick thought, and we'll get into the idea of quickness or swiftness as we're dealing with Ma'at. But Ma'at associates the idea of Ma'at associates itself with even-handedness. And I'm using even-handedness as a replacement for the word justice, which is a word I don't really care for much. I'm not into the just ice thing. I don't come from the ice. So when that word always felt a little weird to me. So I took on even-handedness as a replacement. But in any event, so whether we're dealing with the concept of justice or we're dealing with the concept of even-handedness, what we're dealing with here still is balance. And Ma'at associates herself with those Libra or Librarian scales, okay, the balancing of two different ideas or two different thoughts or two different realities. One of the things that Ma'at always balanced in the physical representation and idea with that was upper and lower, the upper and lower now. Okay, the upper and lower now, which meets in the middle, the balancing point would be the land that we know as, or the region that we know as, is Cairo, in modern day. But that upper and lower now, and so when we're referring to the lower now, we're actually talking about the northern part of the Nile, and that would be the lower Nile, would be the northern part, and the upper Nile would be the southern part, because the Nile actually runs, as far as the water, it goes from south to north. Okay, it goes from south to north. Okay, so the combination of that lower and upper Nile, or the balancing of the lower and upper Nile, which is, of course, the balancing of the land that was considered to be fertile, okay, or that black soil, which is where some have thought or tried to say that Kemet got its name from. As a side note, some will tell you that the term Kemet, which was the ancient land, the ancient term, one of the ancient terms for that Nile Valley region, one of the terms, just so you know. But Kemet, they'll say that it meant the land of the fertile soil or the land of the black soil. This was actually incorrect. It means the land of the burnt faces, or the land of the black faces, is Kemet. Okay, Kim by itself means black. Okay, but another name for that region was also Tameri, Tameri, where we get the name Mary, as in the Bible, Mary. Okay, but Tameri, that was the original name of that Nile Valley civilization. But with the understanding of what we call Upper Kemet or Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, you actually had two different kings, two different rulers, or even two different crowns. Lower Egypt maintained a crown that was red. It was colored red. And Upper Egypt had a white crown. And then you had the aspect of the double crown. Okay, and the double crown represented the sovereignty of Upper and Lower Kemet, or Upper and Lower Egypt. And these are all important symbols, as you know, when we're dealing with Maat. Some of the other symbols that you would have seen was the lotus. The lotus flower was also worn on the crown, as was the naga, or what we know as to be serpent. The word naga means serpent. Okay, the vulture. And the vulture obviously connects us with the Iyami energy, the Iyami, or that Wajet, the witch energy. It was always made clear, at least through symbol, if nothing else, that a ruler could never rule without a witch by his side. Okay, and the naga, or nagaru, or nagara, or serpent, needed that witch. But you also had the symbol of the bee, okay, which was something that was also held and maintained on that crown, as well as the sedge. The bee actually represented Lower Egypt, and the sedge represented Upper Egypt. Okay, but again, you're looking at the balancing here of fertile land to desert. Okay, now I know a lot of times when we talk about Ma'at, we just pretty much talk about the principles, you know, truth, balance, reciprocity, order, you know, so forth and so on. Or, you know, or we'll also speak about the 42 declarations of Ma'at. And I want you to be clear that the 42 declarations of Ma'at is separate from what we call the principles of Ma'at. Okay, you know, again, truth, even-handedness, righteousness, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity, you know, so forth and so on. Balance. I think I said balance, but in any event, that's a little bit separate. All right. Now, what we would call the opposing energy to Ma'at was characterized by a name or word that we know, Isfet. And Isfet is spelled I-S-F-E-T. I-S-F-E-T. And I-S-F-E-T means disorder. Okay, or something being out of harmony. That's Isfet. So Ma'at's job was to sustain the principles of order, the principles of balance, the principles of righteousness, the principles of justice, truth, harmony, reciprocity. Okay, this was, you know, the responsibility of Ma'at, and this was always restored and brought forth by the concept and the energy of Heru, or Horus, okay, that savior, as spoken through and also guided by the Naga, or who some like to call the pharaohs, or the rulers of that particular period. So Ma'at was an active force, but Ma'at was more a code of principles that the universe was governed by it. The entire universe, okay? It was said that even the Neteru had to live by the principles and the code of Ma'at. Okay. And like, as we say often, or you've heard me say, you have in Kemetic philosophy, you have Shu, and in Yoruban philosophy, we have Emi. And as we would call that in Christian law, the divine breath of God. And the divine breath of God is what gives entities a soul and animates them. Well, it was considered that Ma'at was made purely of divine breath. So Ma'at was not divine breath wrapped in an encasement of flesh, or wrapped in an encasement of anything else like a spirit, but Ma'at was a creation of divine breath itself, pure soul. Ma'at was pure soul. Okay, this is critical, and we're going to get into why that's an important idea concept when we understand that Ma'at is made of soul material. Okay, because again, your soul was weighed at the judgment scene. Okay, now we said it was the heart, but that was the symbology of it. Okay, but it was your soul that was weighed against a feather on the scales. So your heart would go on one side of the scale, and a feather would go on the other. Okay, and the feather had to outweigh your heart, and if it didn't, your soul or your heart would be devoured by the force known as Moot. And Moot was that canine, or sometimes you even seen Moot depicted as like a crocodile that always sits. If you get an image of the judgment scene of Ma'at, a lot of times you'll see Anpu, or who they call Anubis. You'll see Ma'at, and you'll see Moot sitting there underneath the scales, waiting to eat the hearts that did not meet the weight requirement. Okay, so that would be the archetype known as Moot. Okay, but keep in mind again that the soul can be devoured, but energy is never destroyed. Okay, so it is actually put into a certain place. Okay, it's put. We'll speak about those places that it is put. It's important also to understand that Ma'at is mated to Tahuti. Okay, Tahuti, and of course in our Yoruba system is Orunmila. Okay, Tahuti being the law bringer and really representing the same principles that Ma'at represents, but also having that scribe attribute, you know, being that writer and being that bringer of the law. Well, where is the law coming from? You know, it's coming from the principles of Ma'at. Ma'at being that feminine force, Tahuti being that masculine force. So what is the consort mating in this? It's the balance of one having the wisdom, the water, that's Ma'at, and the other one having the knowledge, that's Tahuti. You go to Tahuti for words of power, for knowledge, in order to live out the application of that knowledge that Tahuti gives you. When you're living out that application of the knowledge of Tahuti, you're in fact restoring Ma'at. Okay, when Tahuti, now this goes to our dear Sister Kim. When you're speaking truth, okay, Ma'at being those concepts, Ma'at is truth itself. Ma'at is truth, but Ma'at is an archetype. So what does that mean? Truth is mutable because archetypes evolve. Everything is transforming. Everything is evolving. So even the truth evolves. So it is the speaking of truth, the opening of the mouth. Just like when Ptah has the opening of the mouth ceremony, but it is the sharing of those truths that create Ma'at, that create a Ma'atic reality. It's just the speaking of it. Because remember, again, Ma'at is truth. People will say a lot of times that Ma'at is the goddess of truth or the archetype of truth. But calling these Netir and these Neteru gods and goddesses is actually somewhat of an insult, to be honest. You know, so you really want to use the right terminology. Obviously, if you listen to the term Netir, you'll hear something in there. One, nature, and obviously also nurture. Okay, nature and nurture. So just like when Ma'at being that sustaining force and energy that our Kemetic culture was built upon, which was the principles of Ma'at, the principles of nature and nurturing of the divine essence was critical and important. But again, we're speaking about the idea and the concept of truth and an understanding that just by speaking your truth, you have restored Ma'at. By speaking those truths that Ma'at has given to you, and sometimes brought to you by Tahuti. Even in that action, by being the law bringer, you are being Tahuti. Okay? And that's all you really need to do. You just have to speak it. By speaking it really gives you the possibility to manifest those things that are coming from your heart. Okay, that's why it's critical to keep in mind and to know what's in your heart. Speaking from your heart manifests those things that's in your heart. It's very powerful. Okay, but one thought that we have to have, and again, we're dealing with the balance of things, right? We're dealing with order or Maat as opposed to isfet, order as opposed to disorder. The heart holds several energies, right? But one of which is hate. Hate and love come from the same place. They come from your heart, you see? So when you're speaking even hate, which is the energy of separation, because it's coming from your heart, natural and divine cosmic law says that it must be manifested because of the place that it's coming from. The heart is your core and center of manifestation. And, you know, as a side note, I'm going to be on Alim Bey's show again next Wednesday. Those of you who, I find a lot of my people who listen to the show, they also listen to Alim Bey, and Alim also listens to this show. So, you know, I definitely will send a shout out right now to Alim Bey. You know, thank you for inviting me back onto the show again. But this Wednesday, I'll be speaking on the Okan realm, the heart realm, and the significance of the heart, the significance of the things that come from the heart and the things that we inject and pour into the heart. Okay. So that's just a side note, because of course it is related to our concepts of truth, and it's related to our dear Maat. Okay. So I know with this show, normally I kind of give you all a ramp up before I get right into the information. But this show, we're doing a bit different this time. We're going right into it. So hopefully you have been taking notes the whole time, you know, because Maat is a very multi-layered, I'd say, energy, and is only but so much, honestly, that we can actually tap into, you know. But one of the things that I really want to tap into is the symbols of Maat. Okay, one of which, you know, we spoke about the crown, of course, of Lower and Upper Egypt, the Niles, which is, again, when you're dealing with the lower and the upper, or the fertile soil as opposed to the desert land, what you're dealing with is the balancing of your upper self and your lower self, okay, as separated by the meridian of your waistline. So almost look at Cairo as being your waistline. Okay, so it's also important to think about the type of things that you put around your waist, whether it be your beads or whether it be your belt or whatever type of pants you have, because that waistline serves as a gateway within itself between your upper and lower nature, okay, or your own personal river, your upper and lower now. But in any event, we're going to get back into the symbology of Maat, and we're going to get into these concepts real heavy right after we take this quick break. All right, I'll be right back.
For all those in the Manhattan area, please check out our Chief Jegna, Yuya Assaan-ANU, at Integral Yoga on Sunday, April 13th from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m., where he will be hosting a workshop on self-actualization with the cosmic forces of West Africa. In this workshop, you will learn how to self-actualize through the universal energies that govern the laws and character of the cosmos. This workshop is a continuation of the Unleashing of Cosmic Forces of West Africa series that is currently being enjoyed by thousands of listeners on Chief Yuya's popular blog talk radio show, Enlightenment and Transformation. The workshop is Sunday, April 13th, from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Integral Yoga, which is located at 227 West 13th Street, New York, New York. The cost of this event is $25. Be prepared to change your life through aligning your spiritual faculties with their corresponding cosmic archetypes. RSVP at www.meetup.com/African-spirit-workers to meet Chief Jegna Yuya Assaan-ANU at Integral Yoga on Sunday, April 13th from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Integral Yoga is located at 227 West 13th Street, New York, New York. If you attend the workshop Self-Actualization with the Cosmic Forces of West Africa, you will receive 50% off classes and discounts on our books and products. Once again, RSVP at www.meetup.com/African-spirit-workers. See you at Integral Yoga Institute for the workshop Self-Actualization with the Cosmic Forces of West Africa.
Okay, so we're back again with our discussion that we're having on the cosmic archetype known as Maat. And as always, again, you're listening to Foundational Fridays on the Enlightenment and Transformation channel. And I am your host, Yuya Assaan-ANU. And we're having I would say a light exploration of the concepts of Ma'at, because again, Ma'at is multi-layered, and, even when you're dealing with Kemetic culture and Kemetic information, there's so much to go over because we have a pretty decent body of translated literature, which is great, so we can explore and explore and explore and explore and explore. But, in this particular segment, we're dealing with how Ma'at speaks. That energy speaks in our own life path and our own life journey. And what does it really mean aside from just knowing the mythology and knowing some of the principles and ideas that are associated with Ma'at? Now, just so you know, the ostrich feather is one of the symbols of Ma'at. And, this is one of the things that the heart is weighed against. But, many people don't know why the ostrich feather, you have to remember that Ma'at represents what you call justice or even-handedness, okay, and restoring justice, okay, and urging the restoration of justice, okay. When you're dealing with feminine energy, and this is even on the planet itself, the combination or the mating or the cooperating of feminine energy works like this. The woman identifies the schism, or the woman identifies the point of lack or the challenge, and the man develops a solution and implements it to fix it. Okay? So the woman identifies, the man repairs. Okay? Feminine energy identifies what's going on. Masculine energy restores the balance of what needs to be. So Ma'at is what we use to identify. It's a standards that we can use to identify and even run those standards through our own life, whether it's the 42 declarations of Ma'at, or whether it's the 7 principles of Ma'at, or just the concepts of even-handedness and karmic consequence that is associated with Ma'at, that this idea of karma or reciprocity. But ultimately, it is the masculine energy, like Tahuti or like Heru or Horus, that goes out and actually gets the work done. They have to work hand in hand. Okay, they work hand in hand. Never forget that. And that is the same way Ma'at is working in our lives. All right. But a key piece here. Okay, let's talk about this ostrich feather. If you know anything about the ostrich animal, which I urge you to check out, you'll find that it's not this gentle, beautiful creature that we're often, our images conjure up when we think about a bird, right? Birds are pretty and they fly and they live in another realm, where ostrich doesn't fly. An ostrich can run extremely fast. They're actually very swift, and they're extremely strong. There's the misconception about the ostrich when they say, someone who's cowardly is like an ostrich. They will put their heads in the sand. Okay. And people think that ostrich do that when they're afraid. And it's actually the exact opposite. That's actually a attack technique that the ostrich use. They kind of hide themselves in a sense. By putting their heads in the sands, or make themselves appear that they're not going to attack. And then when you pass by or move, they're all on top of you. One kick from an ostrich literally could kick your head off of your shoulders. Literally, it could take your head right, it could snap it right off the joint. These are not weak animals at all. And if you've ever had an opportunity to look at an ostrich, I've seen them, in like drive-through safaris. They're very vicious looking animals. There's nothing cute about them at all. They're not anything you'd want to really go up and pet, So it gives us an idea that when we speak about even-handedness or justice, and when they say that the scales of justice is swift or justice is swift, that we're understanding that it's swift and it's strong. Ma'at is not a weak energy. Ma'at represents grace, by the way. That is one of the principles and concepts of Ma'at. But it's clear that once your grace period has expired and it's time for you to be rendered with the karmic repercussion of whatever you've done in life, that comes swift and strong. That's Ma'at. Okay. So let's look at something else when we're dealing with the idea of Ma'at. Okay. And let's look at this desert reality that we have in Egypt. Okay. And really, when we're dealing with Egypt, there's actually 4 quadrants that are represented. We have what's called the red land, which was actually the desert land. It's called it red because of the color of the sand. This was actually the area for Set. Then we have the black land, which is the fertile soil. That's Kemet. And then we have the upper Nile Valley area and the lower Nile Valley area. Okay. So if you really look at it, we really have like a cross. Okay. Another discussion. But if you picture it, you got this water roadway going down the middle, which is the Nile. And on one side you have red, and on the other side you have black. Kind of sounds like Eshu, right? And that waterway in the middle is, kind of what we use to get from one side to the other. Eshu, of course, dealing with one side of reality going on to the other. Well, we have this concept also represented in Khufu's boat. If anyone's familiar with Khufu is the one who has what they call the solar ark or the solar barge or the sunboat. And in certain representations in Kemet, you'll see Ma'at actually riding on that sunboat along with Ra. They're riding across the sky in this solar ark. Well, this boat was actually, a depiction of the boat was found in ancient times. Well, not really ancient time, but it's an ancient boat. And it was Khufu's boat. Okay, I urge you to look it up, And what does it mean that we have depictions of Ma'at riding the boat with Ra, or the sun, right? What does that actually mean? Okay, well, let's look at this for a second. And we can find an excellent depiction of this in a Disney movie. And the name of that movie is Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean. And I urge anyone, listening to watch all 3 of them. There were 3 of them. The Black Pearl, I think that might have been the first one. And then I don't remember the name, but I just know that the last one was At the World's End, or At World's End, something like that. And the deep thing about these Pirates of the Caribbean movies is that there's a lot of science that they put in them, a lot. And even just the concept, Jack Sparrow, who's kind of like the lead character, the lead pirate, he's clearly a Moor. So it's very interesting, when you understand, you have to always understand that the Moors had a very intimate connection with the stars, with the sky, with astronomy. Okay. And this is what they use to navigate. I am of the very firm, notion and thought that, even our dear Harriet Tubman, who, we also know as Araminta Ross, which her name actually was, that Harriet was a Moor. I strongly feel she was, because she used to navigate by the stars herself. And she said that her father taught her how to do that. And when it was a cloudy day, he told her just to look at the trees, and whichever side the moss was growing, that's the side that you need to travel to, because of course that's north. So it was this connection with the stars, this connection with nature, natir, right? And of course, Harriet was a nurturer, that we understand the Moorish connection. And of course, we're speaking about, again, Pirates of the Caribbean, bringing it right back. But if you look at the last Pirates of the Caribbean movie, you see a scene there where Jack Sparrow is trying to get to World's End. And to make a long story short, what he does is he's in his boat, and he flips the boat over. Okay, inside the water, he flips the boat over at sunset. When the sun is setting, he flips the boat over. And when he does this, he and his crew end up on the other side of the world, or more specifically, in an alternate reality. Okay, now this is the idea of the crossification of the solar boat, okay, or the sun boat of Khufu, that Ra would ride in with Maat. Remember, with Maat, we're dealing with the scales, or we're dealing with the two ideas and concepts of our reality. One being the ethereal or the spiritual, and the other one being the mundane. She maintains the harmonic link between your soul and your physical body. Remember, the term Ma'at means real or authentic. Okay? But she would weigh your soul. Because what is real? The only thing that is real is your soul. Okay? She would weigh your heart. But again, remember, the heart is the seat of the soul. All right? So this was actually this whole solar boat idea, and even having Ma'at aboard the boat, who was played by Calypso, the comedic, the African deity, Calypso. Okay? But she was really representing Ma'at in that scene, so I would urge you to check out that movie, Pirates of the Caribbean. Check them all out, because this is the third one I'm speaking of. So if you don't maybe check out the first two, you may not get what's going on completely. But I think it's a Disney movie, so it's not overly complicated, but certainly complex. But back to Ma'at. Okay, so we dealt with the feather idea. We dealt with the fact that she was the sustaining concept politically, spiritually, and ethically, of Ma'at. She dealt with the undergirdings and the doctrine and the philosophy of Kemet, of Egypt. Okay, and like I said earlier, it was the truth, speaking the truth, that engaged Ma'at. Okay, now let's go back to this idea of the sands for a second, like we spoke about the upper and lower Nile, right? And I want to bring your attention to, a movie I bring up often, though there's a lot of other movies. I know I mention this one a lot, but The Matrix, of course, and which is such an old movie by now. There's been some other ones that have come out that speak to this thing, so I have to start using other movies as a reference. But The Matrix just threw everything in there, Again, Sophia Stewart did an excellent job with that script. But there's a scene, when Morpheus, who's actually the one, not Neo, by the way, who Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne, he's in this is at the time when the Matrix had regurgitated Neo, spit him back out, right? Because Morpheus had brought him in to the truth. And he's talking about asking Neo, well, what is real? Is real what you can see, touch, taste, so forth and so on? Because if that's the case, then what is real is just electrical impulses sent to your brain. Very, very, very deep, statement. So he brings them through certain things. They're actually in the simulator itself. And while they're in the simulator, he shows them what the world actually looks like, the real world. And he says, welcome to the desert of the real. And I always thought that line was so interesting. Welcome to the desert of the real. As far as interesting being at that moment in the film, because the truth is they were still inside of a simulator. He was showing them what the world looked like, but they were inside of the simulator that was aboard the ship. So when he said, welcome to the desert of the real, it's like, well, you're seeing a reflection of what's real, but you can't touch and haven't touched what's real. In fact, the air was so polluted in the real environment on the earth, it was too hazardous to be there, kind of like ether, right? So let's go back again with the idea of the desert and Ma'at's name itself meaning real, right? So when he said, welcome to the desert of the real, the reason he said that, because in a natural environment or in a desert environment, which you'll find that the prophets in most ancient scriptures, they always went into the desert to meditate and to connect with their highest self or to fast. Within the desert, you have no obstructions to what is real. All around you is nothing but pure, quote unquote, barren land. And it's an environment where one has to really be tested. One has to test their own ability and strength of dependence on their own mental, their own character, their own willpower. More importantly than anything else, their willpower. Okay, this is what the desert provides to you, because in truth, there are no distractions whatsoever. Okay, this is the science of the desert. And when you're dealing with truth, we're going back to that. Okay, truth is something that survives. It lives. It does more than survive. I should say, really, truth is existence. Okay, and existence is truth. But it is the lies that seek for survival. The truth doesn't try to survive. In fact, the truth wants to die so that it can be transformed and evolved, so it can be upgraded. The truth is always looking to be upgraded, whereas the lie is looking to make a home. The lie is the only thing that separates us. Okay? And just like sands are always shifting and moving and swirling around, just like the truth. Okay? Just like the truth. You'll find that when you deal with concepts of the desert, or let's just deal with concepts of sand in many ways represents, or the desert represents truth, but there's an illusion there that's also present. Why? Because typically when you are dealing with concepts of sand is connected with the water, right? The ocean, the tide. In the desert, you're not approaching any water or tide, okay? You're constantly going through a situation where there is no relief from the reality of your environment. No relief from the reality of your environment. Ma'at represents the truth of what your environment actually is. So just like when you have the 42 declarations of Ma'at and you're saying, I have not done this thing, I have not done that thing, I have not done that thing, I have not done that thing, it's speaking about the realness of the environment that your true self actually lives in, which is the heart. The heart has never sinned because the heart remains just as pure as this desert is. Okay? The desert is purity. There are no obstructions from man. There are no high rises. Pollution is not even an issue in the desert. Okay. And not to say that the desert is always a place that's static, because it certainly isn't. It's hot. It's a place that's very hot, but it's also a place that gets very cold. It's a place that even has flash floods. This is the desert, you see? So, it's important to kind of understand that, again, when we're dealing with the irony, I would say, of, Morpheus saying something like, welcome to the desert of the real, when in fact, when you unplug from what you think is real, you're still in something that's false. And that's for those, a lot of times people who are quote unquote conscious, they will ridicule those who are still sleepwalking. And they'll say things like, well, they're still plugged into the matrix. Well, the truth is, so are you. What you're only doing now, you're in a simulator perceiving what is real. Okay, let's speak about freedom for a second. Now that you've unplugged yourself from the matrix, you can use the principles of Ma'at to have an understanding, or more so, knowledge of what freedom is. But do you truly understand freedom? Do you truly have a free mind? Has your mind been regained and taken back? Well, what language do you think in? Is it the language that you thought in before your freedom was taken? So that kind of gives you some ideas of if you're truly experiencing freedom on this plane. The truth is, we can look at the desert of the real through a simulator, just like we can look at the reflection of our higher self and strive to be that. Okay. And that is one of the things that Maat urges us to do, to try to travel that chain link or that bridge between ourselves and our higher selves, which is a constant and a lifelong aspiration, because the truth is you can never be your higher self. You can only try to be reflections of it at certain times and glimpses of it at certain times, just like you can only go into a simulator and see the image of what the real actually is, but you're not really actually looking at the real. Very important. Okay. Now it's the weighing of that heart with the feather, which brings us to this notion. Well, if nothing is real, then should I feel guilty about the things that I've done in my life? Where should my conscience be, when it's time for my heart to be weighed against that feather, if I realize the real part of me, the immortal part of me, has never been touched? It's never been touched by the distraction. The real part of me is still in the real desert, in the purity and the beauty of that desert, where all that I can touch is realness. Because when I look right up to the sky, there's no obstructions between me and the Most High. Okay? There's no obstructions there. When I'm walking this sand, there's no obstructions between me and my ability and will to exist. This is the realness. Okay? This is the true desert of the real. Okay? And when we look at that with the weighing of our soul, now you got to understand that judgment scene, which of course was stolen, stolen by other traditions. I'll say that because there's so many. I was getting ready to give a list, but we'll be here all night. But many have stolen that concept of the judgment scene. Okay, it's not a new plunder, but that judgment scene is not something that necessarily just happens at the end of your life. That judgment scene is something that happens every single day. Again, Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow, he's in the boat. He flips it to the other side of the world when the sun is setting. When the sun is setting, that's nighttime. That's nighttime happening there. Okay. So when you're going into your sleep, into your astral realms, that's when you're actually being tested. Okay. And if you can understand that judgment scene of Ma'at is an ongoing experience that you're dealing with every day. And if your conscious or your guilt is outweighing the principles of Ma'at, or your allegiance in your acknowledgement of those principles because you're ignoring what you're supposed to do. Some of us, we get into these states of self-loathing, and while someone is giving us the knowledge and information, we're still, yeah, I understand that, but so then you will be devoured by Moot, and you will be one who will linger, and instead of going to the next place to create new worlds, you'll just return back to the planet, but you won't return in a glorified body. You'll return as a disincarnate energy, okay? Or you might go into the primordial abyss, okay? And once you go into the primordial abyss, then you lose all of your spiritual consciousness, okay? You lose all of your spiritual consciousness. It's important for you to understand that Ma'at's reality is one that is woven within the fabric of all existence. Because remember, she is divine breath. She is it. And all things are made of divine breath. This is where we find out how Ma'at relates itself to our Yoruban Obatala. Obatala, who is the energy of omnipresence. So now you see why he's the energy of omnipresence, because he is also the scales. He's justice. He's truth. He's reciprocity. He's all these same principles when you study Obatala. Okay. So being those principles, we understand that Ma'at is in and of and is everything that society in our existence should and is built upon. Okay, again, those Libran scales, of even-handedness is key here when you understand that. All right, so I just wanted to hit those points of Maat and get you to understand, through example and through the things that we spoke about in this particular segment, that your judgment scene is an ongoing reality. It's not something that you come in and out of. And I wanted you to understand the concept of the desert of the real. The desert of the real currently is the desert of the mind, because your mind can only perceive what is real, but you have yet to actually fully embody and be what is real, because you can't yet. You can't yet until the final judgment scene. Okay. Once you go through the final judgment scene, when your body is devoured and the soul is released from the seat of the heart. Okay. When you come out of your throne, the heart is the throne of the soul. But when you stand up as that supreme archetype and stand up and get up from the seat of your throne, then you will know the trueness of what is real. But until then, we are constantly searching for and trying to touch that reflection of realness. And that is your job, to touch the reflection of what is real. Okay. And to see if you can weather it. If you can weather the storm of what actually is real and not surround yourself with delusion, weaves, wigs, makeup, long titles and names and initiations that don't really mean anything, mountains and mountains of books to make it seem that you're conscious so people can see your book as soon as they come into your house, wasted technology, dead information, addictions, all of these things that block your view of what is real. Maybe you need to go into the desert to help you conceptualize this. It's up to you. But that has been our show on Maat. And again, for more information on Maat, sign up for classes. Okay. SaduluHouse.com. We're in the process right now of moving all of our classes onto the site, which will be great. So for those of you who are considering signing up, within the next month, we're going to have a much more interactive and dynamic experience as far as the school goes. So we're in the process of working on it back, and we're really excited about that. But phase 2 is when we start really digging into these archetypes much deeper and get into more rituals to encounter these archetypes, work with them, employ them, and get them to open up their wisdom to us, which is really the thing. Okay. But that has been our segment, and I'm glad that you joined us. Those of you who have made it to the end, thank you for staying with us. And for this introduction on the archetype known as Maat. Until next time, I am Yuya Assaan-ANU, Chief Jegna of the ANU Spiritual Order and the head instructor of Sadulu House Spiritual Center. One love.
Please join us as the Sadulu House Spiritual Center exhibits at the Mind, Body, and Spirit Expo, which is the largest holistic and spiritual expo in the tri-state area, on May 2nd through May 4th at the Garden State Exhibit Center in Somerset, New Jersey, located at 50 Somerset Drive in Somerset, New Jersey. At this 3-day event, you will have access to national and international exhibitors and speakers, including our very own master teacher, author, spiritual guide, and Chief Jegna of the Sadulu House Spiritual Center, Yuya Assaan-ANU. Yuya Assaan-ANU will take participants of the lecture through various steps which will attune each individual in attendance to their own unique genius, source frequency, and improve the quality of their life. The lecture will take place Saturday, May 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the room General 2 at the Garden State Exhibit Center, and it is free to attend this lecture. Please visit www.mindbodyspiritexpo.com and click the link for speakers and lectures for more information. We also urge you to check out the exhibition at the Mind, Body, and Soul Expo, as the Sadulu House Spiritual Center will be exhibiting its products and services all 3 days. The Sadulu House Spiritual Center exhibition booth will include discounted classes, spiritual consultations, spiritual tools and divination supplies, books, DVDs, and more. Our booth location number is A10A. If you decide to come to the expo, you will also have access to free lectures, 3 days of free yoga classes, workshops, natural products, holistic health products, live entertainment, including music, drumming, chanting, and more. The Mind, Body, and Spirit Expo is May 2nd from 4 to 9 p.m., May 3rd from 10 to 8 p.m., May 4th from 10 to 6 p.m., and is located at the Garden State Exhibition Center at 50 Atrium Drive, Somerset, New Jersey, 08873. The cost is $5 to enter on Friday and $15 to enter on Saturday and Sunday. There are discounts available. So for more details and to RSVP for the exhibition and lecture, please visit www.meetup.com/African-spirit-workers. See you there. We thank you for your listening support and urge you to become an active participating member of the ANU community. Therefore, if you would like more information on ANU events and offerings, please sign up for our newsletter at anunation.org. That is ANUNATION.org. For all those listening, if you'd like to move closer to the calculations and fundamental understandings of the ANU order, be sure to pick up the book, Grasping the Root of Divine Power. If you desire a spiritual reading to help you map your current spiritual position in the face of the world and learn the greatest pathways for your fortune in this season, or you would like to become a student of the ANU spiritual order, you can go to saduluhouse.org. That is SADULUHOUSE.org. If you would like to sponsor or advertise on this or any of our other broadcasts, please contact us at 1-800-ANU-LIVING. That is 1-800-268-548-464. Or email us at questions@anunation.org. That is the word questions@anunation.org. For more information about Orisha and Orisha products, you can go to orishareligion.com. That is ORISHARELIGION.com. ANU Nation thanks you for your continued support. Be well.